So, Armageddon Time is a 1980 drama by James Gray, which is probably one of the most gut wrenching, but also like hopeful films that I think I've seen this year. Just because this film really got to me. I was surprised how much this movie worked its magic on me for what could have been just kind of like what could have just been like a simple exercise in melodrama actually turned out to be rather surprising and have a lot of spirit to it. So the premise of the film is that it takes place in 1980 in New York. And this, I believe he's like a preteen called Paul Graff, is basically struggling in school. He's in a new public school. His Jewish family is a little bit hesitant about him going there. They fear that he's not going to be successful in life. They fear that, the pressures of society are going to come down upon him and basically ruin his life. So there's a mixture of both like fear and love that they have for him, but it's also a very troubling time in that era. Paul, played by Banks Rapetta, I believe his name is. Great kid actor here. Absolutely love his performance. And I love how this film has this very like lived in aspect where it doesn't feel like it's meandering too much, like it's getting to all the key beats, but there's also like different dimensions that we get to see of the character. Like it's not just that Paul has like a terrible relationship with his father. It's that his father is fearful and also damaged. Like there are moments where we get to see him as kind of like a playful guy, the way he tries to like get his kids up in the morning by banging pots and dancing around them. You kind of love him on that aspect. And then there are moments where like when he finds out that Paul's been smoking weed, he beats him. And it is shocking and sad and depressing. And then you get other scenes where like, basically like Paul's father, Irving Graff, played by Jeremy Strong, who does an amazing job here, just kind of melting into this role, is a very like conflicted soul who's worried for Paul, but also, is kind of had like a troubling life for himself. So you can feel like it always feels like the family is trying to do what's best for Paul, but that they don't quite have the tools to give him everything that he needs to grow up, which is explored so perfectly in the film. It's a little bit of like a spoiler, but towards the end of the film, Irving actually talks with Paul and says, look, in this, like, there's a very dangerous situation towards the end of the film where Irving says, look, Paul, you got lucky. You're not going to be that lucky in life. We don't have that kind of luck, and life is going to be unfair. And, you kind of got to try to find a better life, and it's not going to be easy. But who ends up becoming the biggest inspiration of Paul's life is his grandpa, Aaron, played by Anthony Hopkins. And is it any surprise that Hopkins is just a lot of fun in this film, especially because it's not just that Hopkins has a great performance here, he does, but the character he plays is an aged soul who kind of feels like he has way more insight to give than Paul's parents do. And this is because like as Aaron reveals, he has seen he has seen like the terrors of like of like Nazis and persecution and anti-Semitism and racists. He's seen it all, and so he realizes that that this isn't going to work for Paul. That he can't just stand idly by. There's a great moment in the trailer where Hopkins' character basically like looks at Paul and says like like how's school? And Paul says like, well, like, some of my classmates, they said a racially insensitive word and I don't know if I liked it. And Hopkins is like, well, what'd you do about it? And Paul's like, oh, well, I didn't do anything. It's like, oh, do you think that was the right thing to do? And the trailer kind of leaves it there as like a topic to explore. But Aaron immediately gives the answer to that question where he says like, I'll tell you what, that wasn't the right thing to do. And it's like, and there's this great little monologue where he basically says, these people who say these horrible things about black people, they're going to say horrible things about you too. And they're going to stab you in the back. And they're going to be cruel, hateful people who will just make the world awful. And literally just says, fuck them. It was such a great moment of hope, because like it comes at a time where you can sense that something very deeply sad and terrible is going to happen with this family. And it comes at just the right moment, where basically Hopkins' character basically says, like, yeah, all those people who are saying racist stuff in your neighborhood, fuck them. That's and he says, yes, I said a bad word. I'm your grandpa, whatever. And that's, I think, like the best way to describe the film, is that it's these moments of both like tragedy and hope, and they punch you so hard. They are, oh my God, like it's a combination, I think, just like the crisp writing that Gray has here for like making very multifaceted characters who you learn to like and love over the course of this film. And the fine performances where it kind of like shocks you, but it feels believable. In particular, I really liked Anne Hathaway as Paul's mother, Esther, who has a playful side to her, but also a deeply emotional side, which just sends her into fits of depression where there are aspects where she feels like she can't control her life. And at the same time, like much like with Paul's father, there are very charming, playful moments where she tries to, even in very tense moments, she tries to find little bits of humor, which is not uncommon for a family that tries to stick together and tries to do what's right. So you have these where it doesn't just feel like, Paul's family is the worst, where even when Paul feels that way, feels like, I got to get away from my family. They're nutty. They have backwards ideas. They can't help me. They are not giving me everything I need to grow up. And at the same time, you can tell they're trying. You can tell that they're not good at this, but they're trying, and they're trying so hard that you start to feel for them, even when they do these terrible things that you feel like would be unforgivable. Like with Irving, like beating up on Paul, like that's a heartbreaking moment, and you soon realize that it's just he's ill prepared. He can't handle getting used to this life. The other standout kid actor right next to Banks Ripida is oh God, I forgot his friend's name, but he has a black friend, and they connect because they both realize that they can't, they realize their parents can't help them. His friend is called Johnny, who's played by Jalen Webb. And Johnny basically, like, he realizes that his life is screwed. He knows that, like, his parents are out of the picture, his grandma can't help him, Child Protective Services are going to take him away soon. He realizes all this. So he rebels early. And, like he just tells the teacher to screw off, like, I know you're not going to help me. I know I've been held back, and I know no one is going to be there for me, so I'm just going to be there for myself. So, of course, Paul immediately gravitates towards this kid because it feels like he has his life together. He knows where he's going. He knows what he wants to do, even though he doesn't. He doesn't know where he's going to spend the next night. He doesn't know what his future is going to be. But Paul gets this kid, and they get each other. So they form this really kind of tragic friendship that takes place over the course of this fall school year that doesn't, without revealing too much, it does not go well for them. And so you're left with this kind of like this somber, but almost kind of like wee bit of like hope, where you hope that like Paul learns from this and learns that, like the American dream that his folks believed that they could have, which they bring up a few times, like especially Anthony Hopkins' character, that it's not something that's going to be that easy to attain, and that it's not going to be what you thought it was going to be, and that it is going to be unfair. This is particularly true because, as a little bit of a surprise in this film, John Deal shows up at Paul's prep school when he gets taken out of public school for smoking weed, and he gets forced into prep school, and the school has the school gets a lecture from John Deal, who's playing Fred Trump, and he looks quite like him. And then in another creative bit of casting, you get Jessica Chastain playing Mary Ann Trump, and they basically give the speech that kind of boils your blood, where they say like, "Hey, I didn't get any handouts. I built myself up from. They don't quite say the part where it's just like, oh, I was born into wealth, but I built myself up, and you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And yeah, at a prep school where, which is just, it boils your blood, and even it gets to a point when Paul hears the speech for the second time, even he realizes, yeah, these people are full of shit and they don't know what they're talking about, and I've got to do better, and I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I can't be like these people, and I've got to make the world a better place. So like, there's so many sad moments here. Like, there's an unfortunate death. There's a wrongful arrest. There's someone who gets beat up. There's racism. There's like anti-Semitism that's addressed. But it's addressed in this way that it doesn't feel like a Green Book way where it's trying to say like, here's like the simple happy answer to it. Like, oh, here's like the easy to spot racist. Like, there's no like goofy over the top racist here where, someone can just sit there in the theater and say, oh, well, good thing I'm not that guy. No, they're very like, like they feel like more real. Like, like common people who like occasionally now and then will just let racism slip out of their mouths because that's the way that they were raised. So it feels very, it has this, I don't quite want to say like it's like a realism, but it has like a lived in feel to it where you're watching, where it feels like every character involved has 3 dimensions to them, where it doesn't feel like this is the villain that are, that Paul has to best, or this is, the bully he has to stop. It always feels like there's so much going on in these characters' lives, and that their perceptions of the American dream have kind of like shifted their perspective and their desires and how they see the future for themselves. Like, at one point, they're watching like the election where Reagan is elected, and they basically, there's a dour moment where they basically realize, man, if Reagan's elected, that this could be the end of America. We could be screwed, So yeah, there's this very like bleak outlook on the future, but also this kind of like personal hopefulness. Like, I believe at one point in the film there is a little bit of dialogue where it's basically stated, look, I don't really care about the future, but I care about what our place is going to be within it. Like, I can't speculate Paul can't speculate what his career is going to be. It might be in rockets because he likes rockets. It might be in art because he really likes to draw and has a fascination with art. He doesn't know. And we don't know by the end either. He just kind of walks away from it all and tries to make his life better. And it is such a perfect ending for that. Like I said, there were so many moments here where I was on like the verge of tears for how Paul kind of tries to embody this stoicness, to kind of like be there for his grandpa and be the bigger man and stand up to racists, even though it might not always work. Like, especially like there's a great talk towards the end of the film where Paul speaks with Hopkins' character, and Hopkins basically says like, hey, did your fight work? And Paul's like, I don't think it did. And Hopkins like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that, but you can't give up just because you lost one fight. And you kind of see like there is a little bit of like hope and inspiration, especially with how he has like a photo of Muhammad Ali on his wall to kind of like, inspire him to go forward. Like, and you can tell like he wants to succeed. Like, he has daydreams about being a success and, imagining that he's like a prize fighter and all that. Like, he wants to fight. So you have some hope for this kid by the end, that he's going to come out, that he might come out okay for it. And having that little bit of hope makes it so like hopeful, but like tearful at the same time, where it's like you don't quite have a clear answer, but there might be a good future for Paul. You never know. And just everything from like the setting, the tiny little daydreams that Paul has, the little moments of humor and what's the right word I'm looking for here? Not quite desire, but but passion for like a better world. All these little elements work so well that this is definitely one of my favorite films of the year.